There's a lot of movies out there that like to depict the themes of isolation. Some make it more obvious than others. But what if it's one scene that perfectly describes someone in pure isolation? And what if it's from a film that doesn't really need an introduction? Alfred Hitchcock's 1960s Psycho needs no introduction. Based on the book of the same name written by Robert Bloch, a secretary named Marion Kane steals $40,000 and goes on the run, only to check into the isolated Bates Motel run by the shy Norman Bates and his mother. Not only did this film cement Alfred Hitchcock as the master of suspense, but it also changed how films are made today. There's a lot to talk about this film that already has been talked about. If that's the famous shower scene, the real-life parallels between Norman Bates and Ed Gein, or even how this was the first film that you had to watch on time. But the scene that I want to talk about is the ending, and how this scene not only describes Norman's madness, but also how truly isolating this scene is. In this scene, Norman Bates is arrested for the murder of Marion Kane. A psychiatrist explains what happened to Norman, that he had murdered his mother and lover years earlier after feeling abandoned by her, that over the years his personality had become shared with hers. Norman is sitting on a chair against an empty wall, completely isolated on his own. The camera does a slow push-in as we hear the voice of his mother, or well, his mother personality in his head.
They're probably watching me. Well, let them. Let them see what kind of a person I am.
As the push-in reaches into a medium close-up of Norman's face, he looks around, almost like he's listening to the mother personality in his head. We then cut to a fly, and Mother says that she's not even going to swat that fly. We'll go back to what this means later on. And then we cut back to Norman, as he stares into the camera with a sinister smile, and his mother personality gives the final line of the film.
She wouldn't even harm a fly.
Now that we have a basic rundown on the scene, now I'm going to go over more analysis on the scene and how I think they done it. First shot of this scene is of Norman in a wide shot. Notice how there's next to nothing in this shot. The only thing you can see is Norman sitting on a chair, a window in the background, and a mug on the floor. Not only is Norman isolated by himself, but there's next to nothing in this room, making it even more isolating for him. Then a slow pushing happens right as the mother's dialogue begins to start. The closer it gets to Norman, the more claustrophobic the scene becomes. If it weren't for the music in this scene, or the voiceover of his mother personality in his head, this scene would be completely silent. The pushing continues for a little bit, but when it stops at a medium close-up of Norman's face. Before I continue to talk about the analysis of this scene, I want to go back a little bit. Here, I want to talk about how I blocked out this scene and how I remade it. Here's my 3D interpretation of how I blocked out this scene. The red ball on the chair is my placement of the actor. The two yellow balls are my placement of lights, and the blue rectangle is my placement of the camera. Now with my blocking done, it was time to recreate the scene. Even with my blocking down, a lot of this was just trial and error and guess, because there's not really a lot of info about the blocking of this scene. With this film being filmed in the 1960s, a lot of the equipment that was used then are old by today's standards. So for this shoot, we just shot with modern filming equipment. Now let's go over my recreation of the shot. I used a big open area in my unit that we call the topping. Got my mate Callum here to sit in the chair and reenact Norman's facial expressions to his best abilities. For recording this scene, I used a DJI Osmo, which wasn't what I was originally going to use for this scene, but it was light and manageable, and for how small it was, gave out really good quality, which I was really happy with. To get the pushing, we needed some kind of camera rig or dolly, which we didn't have during that moment. So weirdly enough, we were able to find a wheelchair, and that's how we got the movement for this scene, and honestly, it gave me the result I wanted, so weirdly enough, it worked. Now the final thing to talk about is the lighting for this scene. I used 2 lights for this, and one light was just a standard lighting stand, while the other was an Aperture 300D with a softbox added onto it. Overall, I'm just really happy with this shot, and I couldn't have done any of it if it weren't for my friends over at uni who helped me out. I wouldn't have had any idea how to do all this by my own, so despite this being my shot, it was not done all by myself, and I couldn't have done any of this by myself if I'm going to be honest, so big thanks to everyone who helped me out. Now let's get back to my analysis on this scene. So what's the meaning behind this fly? Naturally, flies are pests to us, and it's natural for us to just kill them or swat them away. And despite the fact that Norman's mother personality has literally killed people, to her, she's too innocent to swat a fly, and flies are nothing to us. And the meaning of the mother personality saying why she wouldn't even harm a fly, this is just a delusion of innocence, and if they can convince them that they're innocent, then they've basically gotten away with murder. It really shows Norman's descent into madness and embracement of this mother personality, and his face says it all. And then, the last thing we see of Norman is a slow fading of the mother's corpse that we see earlier in the film over his face, showing that Norman has fully embraced his mother personality. The last shot of this film is Marion's car that Norman drowned earlier in the film, and that is how Alfred Hitchcock's 1960s Psycho comes to an end.